The first verse of this week's Torah portion holds a special place in my heart. The opening sentence of Parashat Noach, the famous story of Noah and the flood, were the very first words of Torah I ever learned. Second grade marked the beginning of formal Torah study at Akiba Academy, the Orthodox elementary school I attended in Dallas. And our curriculum skipped the Torah's opening stories of creation in favor of beginning with the story of Noah's Ark. On the first day of school, our teacher, whom we called Mora Chaya, just means the teacher named Chaya in Hebrew, taught us this first verse of the portion to a sing-song melody, the likes of which might be familiar to anyone here who studied in a yeshiva or in cheder. It went like this. Eile toldot Noach, these are the children of Noah. Noach ish tzaddik, Noach was a tzaddik, a righteous person. Tamim haya, he was perfect bidorotav, in his generation. Et ha-Elohim, with Hashem, with God. Hitalech Noach, Noach walked. I doubt you'll ever hear this melody played at the Philharmonic, but clearly it did the job if I still know the verse by heart close to 3 decades later. By the way, if you ever need a song by Mora Chaya to remember the order of the portions in the Torah, or the months of the Jewish year, or the 12 tribes of Israel, or about the joys of keeping kosher, just let me know, I've got you covered. As a child, I learned about the rabbinic debate around 3 words in this verse, Tamim haya b'dorotav. Noah was perfect or blameless in his generation. The rabbis disagree about the meaning of this phrase, which refers to Noah's righteousness among a generation of people so corrupt that God decided to destroy the world with a flood, sparing only Noah and his family to begin anew. According to our commentators, we are to understand every word of the Torah to have significance. Not a single word is extraneous. Why then would the Torah call Noah blameless in his generation? Why not just call him blameless? The Talmud captures the essence of this debate in a conversation between 2 rabbinic giants of the 3rd century, one who was known as Reish Lakish and the other who was called Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan sees this phrase, blameless in his generation, as more of a disparagement than a compliment, teaching, relative to the other people of his corrupt generation, Noah was righteous and wholehearted. But relative to other generations, Noah would not have been considered righteous. Reish Lakish disagreed, teaching that if Noah was able to maintain his righteousness, even in the midst of all of the bad influences surrounding him, how much more upright would he have been considered by another, less wicked generation? In other words, was Noah even greater for being a righteous person in a corrupt society, or was he just the best of the worst? An interesting question to be sure, but one that has always felt mostly theoretical to me. That is, until I became a parent. There was an ancient rabbi by the name of Ben Bagbag who said about the Torah, turn it and turn it over again, for everything is in it. Look into it and become old and gray with it. In other words, we must allow Torah to grow with us, to take on new meaning in different stages of our lives. As I prepared this Devar Torah, I studied this verse from our portion seriously for the first time since I became a parent. And I found that the phrase in question, Noah was blameless in his generation, resonated in an entirely new way. I understood a new, larger question from the debate amongst the rabbis. Should it be our goal to do the best that we can given the circumstances in which we find ourselves, or should we strive to rise above the challenges of our surroundings to achieve something that would be considered extraordinary even under the best of circumstances? As a parent of 3 children under the age of 5, manifestations of this question are constant in my life. Is it good enough that I get my kids fed each morning, even if sometimes the breakfast consists of a blueberry muffin from the drive-through line at Starbucks? Or should I be able to transcend the chaos of the morning and find a way to make a home-cooked meal? Is it okay to give in to a screaming toddler's demands in order to end a tantrum in a public place, or have I forever lost an opportunity to teach an important life lesson? These are, of course, lighthearted examples, and I will be happy to accept words of encouragement from anyone who has been there after our service. Kidding aside, though, I think each of us wrestles with these kinds of questions during periods in our lives when the amount of time in the day is completely inadequate to fulfill all of our commitments, when the circumstances in which we find ourselves hold us back from achieving that which we know we are capable of, when it feels as though we have to choose between caring for ourselves and caring for those we are responsible for. The rabbis disagree on the question of whether we should give Noah, and ourselves for that matter, a break, appreciating the good we've managed to achieve in a difficult situation, or whether we should strive to hold ourselves to a higher standard. Of course, it's impossible to answer definitively the question of whether it's okay, or even perhaps admirable, sometimes to be just good enough. There is, however, another episode in this week's Torah portion that sheds some light for me. Following the flood, the Torah presents a story that is not very becoming and certainly surprising about Noah, the man who was Tamim B'Torotav, the blameless one of his generation. God has destroyed a corrupt world, sparing Noah and his family and making a covenant full of hope, intended to mark the start of a new and better society. And what's the first thing Noah does? He immediately plants a vineyard, gets drunk, and humiliates himself in front of his family. This is the very last appearance of our tzaddik, our righteous one, with the Torah reporting only that Noah then died 350 years later. What a disappointing, disheartening way to conclude the story of a man in whom God put such trust, who was meant to be the symbol of a newfound hope in the world. I think there's another way to see it, though. Noah may only have been great in comparison to others in his generation. He may not have always behaved in a way we admire, and he was clearly flawed. And yet in the Torah, the most sacred record of the stories of our people, Noah still gets to be Tamim, wholehearted, a tzaddik, a righteous one. No one revoked the compliments, even when Noah messed up. So does our tradition applaud us for the times in our lives when we get by just with something good enough? I don't know. But I do know that our tradition teaches that even flawed people, even overwhelmed people, even those of us with 3 screaming toddlers clinging to our legs, can accomplish something good. Shabbat shalom.